Hey everybody, hope that you're doing awesome today. See some people that are joining and trickling in. So we'll give everyone just a moment to get joined and get settled, and then we'll get started on our content. While we're waiting for everyone to get joined, if you are already with us, if you'd like to fill out the polling question that we put in, just to get a general idea of where everyone is in their migration to GA4 right now. And by the way, I know I had a little bit too much fun with the answers, but hopefully you enjoyed it.
And there's no wrong answer.
Only your answer. So all right, so we are 1 minute after, and it looks like we still have some folks joining, but in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get things rolling. So we're super excited that you have decided to join us today for the top 4 ways that you can be prepared to transition to GA4. I'm Jen Moss. I am the VP of Marketing for Glew. Super excited to have you here, and I'm going to let my other team members introduce themselves.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Megan Bredeman, and I am the head of sales here at Glew. I've actually been with the company over 7 years, so really excited to talk about GA4 today.
Hey everyone, Nick Astroth here, lead our integrations team here at Glew. So any questions related to the data, hopefully happy to answer those.
We're so happy that Nick is here.
Yeah. Nick is the know-all, be-all.
Expert, yes. Awesome. So if you are just joining, if you want to take a moment, we did put a polling question up for everyone to answer, just to get a general idea of where you are today in terms of your preparation and planning for migrating to GA4. So if everybody would just take a quick second to go ahead and respond to the poll. The answers are, if this is a pop quiz, we'd fail. We talked about it, but we don't know where to start. We have a general idea, but we haven't started. Or we're on our way, but want to learn best practices from others.
Looks like we got a 3 in the comment section too.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like we have people that are sort of all over the board in terms of where they are with their migration plan. Awesome. And I think that that's totally fair. Meg and I have been doing a lot of research on this, and I think everyone is still kind of in the, all right, we know that it's coming, but how do we start tackling this? Which is really what inspired this webinar.
Yeah.
So to that end, we'll go ahead and kick it off. And so Meg, ultimately, what is the timeline for transitioning from Universal Analytics to GA4?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Universal Analytics is going to be going away, and that is going to be going away July 1st, 2023. So you may think, okay, I have a ton of time. That seems so far away. But one of the things I really want to encourage everybody is that the sooner the better, and that time is of the essence and time is your friend. So right now, if you turn on your GA4, you still will have access to your Universal Analytics and have the ability to toggle back between the two. So it kind of seems like a no-brainer to me that I would probably go ahead and turn on your GA4. That way it starts to collect the data. And you still have the opportunity to go back and forth. Again, there are some different things like we'll talk about in the webinar, just about, ways to look at things. So I think the sooner that you give yourself, time to kind of move over and adjust, the better. Another thing that I think was a great point is that, with the holidays coming up, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you might want to go ahead and start collecting that data, because things are going to be measured differently in GA4. So that way, if you want to look at year over year reporting, you're kind of doing an apples to apples comparison versus not having that data at all. So, if you're a procrastinator and you're just going to kick and scream until the very last minute, then Jen and I would say at the very latest, February 1st, that would give you 6 months is kind of the very latest. But I say, go ahead and start. Why not? Because you can go ahead and just turn it on. And then that way you're collecting data. As soon as you set it up, you'll start collecting data. So it will give you, I think that will give you time. And it will also enable that you're, collecting all of that data. Yeah, to Hannah's point, Hannah, yeah, turning on GA4 right now doesn't hurt anything. So, yeah.
Awesome. So basically the headline is get rolling on the migration by Groundhog Day. That was my
Yes. Yes, I like that.
We'll see if Punxsutawney Phil sees his shadow. If you get migrated, it's a big day.
Yep. Love
it. So we know that this is happening. Obviously, Google is a leader. Ultimately, what's the motivation really from transitioning away from Universal Analytics to GA4? What was at the heart of this change, Meg?
Yeah, so I thought it was kind of interesting. So I don't know if you guys know a lot about Google Analytics, but Google Analytics, so originally there was a company called Erkin Software. And so they were kind of like the leader in, website traffic analysis. And so Google actually acquired Erkin Software in 2005, and that's when their technology is what built Google Analytics. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But obviously, Google Analytics has been around for a really long time, and I think just in terms of like technology, they got to stay up to date with the changing times, and that really is with the way that people purchase. So no longer are people purchasing on the desktop. I can't remember the last time I purchased off of the desktop. I use my mobile phone. And a lot of companies now offer an app as well. So like Zara is one I most recently used. I buy all of my kids' clothes off of Zara Kids using the app. So what that does is with this transition to GA4, it's enabling us to connect the dots of the customer journey and also give you more data to report on, not just on the desktop, but all of the different data sources that you're using as well. And I think that kind of goes into looking not only at your web and app conversions and all of that good stuff, but you can also see maybe you convert 70% higher on your app versus your desktop. That also gives you opportunity to spend money where it makes the most sense for the most conversions. And another thing that I thought was super valuable for a lot of our clients too is that with the new change to GA4, just one example that I thought was awesome is like before you'd be able to see it's like referred traffic. It might come like you might have somebody was coming from your site because of a video you have on YouTube. So it's like, referral YouTube as the source. But now with GA4, you can actually see that you'll be able to see like the actual name of the video that sent the traffic your way. So I think even though it sounds scary and everybody loves Google Analytics, there's a lot of good things that are going to come out of this transition. So even though, in the beginning, there's a little bit of a learning curve and a little bit of time that you're going to have to invest as a team. In the long run, I think everybody's going to be really happy with all of the different data that you now have access to and really kind of painting that whole customer journey for you.
Awesome. So one of the first points that we wanted to bring up, and this is very near and dear to my heart as a marketer, Meg and I have been talking about this a lot recently, but throughout my entire marketing career, Google Analytics has been sort of like the backbone of marketing. I mean, your website is where you experience all of your conversions. So I would say the first thing is really, it's a psychological shift, really. You're moving away from thinking about your website in terms of sessions, and we're moving over to events. And so I would say that's really the biggest sort of, fundamental change that's happening between Universal Analytics and GA4. But with events, what's interesting is that you get a lot more granularity. So as Meg was talking about earlier, you have people that are doing, multi-channel experiences. And so ultimately with GA4, you're going to be able to track all those different event types. So page views, scrolls, outbound clicks, video engagement, file downloads. So as a marketer too, that's so important to me to understand the types of content that my prospects are engaging with. So should we be spending more time and more energy developing video content, maybe versus, a short one pager, or it just gives you so much insight into what your prospects are asking for. And so ultimately, really all of this hinges, again, around setting up events properly. So events are sort of the foundation. So when you think about really the shift, it's everything hinges on setting up your events, and then your events ultimately will build your reports. So while we are giving up some of our most sacred metrics of bounce rate and session duration, we are ultimately getting this more holistic engagement rate. So that's one of the major perks, is really having this ability to see the entire customer journey. I feel like that's such a big buzzword right now. I probably say it entirely too much, but it's just true. We really need to understand the whole life cycle of our customer. And so really this move to GA4 aligns very closely with understanding that.
Yeah. And one thing I think that's important for people to note too in the change is that right now, I think like out of the box, you have like 30 plus reports in Universal Analytics, whereas like in GA4, there's more data available, but you have to actually set up those reports. I think there's only like 10 different standard reports out of the box. So, as I mentioned earlier, kind of giving yourself that time and giving yourself that ramp up really goes back to that, to making sure, because in order to track the data, you have to set it up too. So giving yourself enough time to say, hey, what are the most important reports that we look at daily? And then, setting those reports up in GA4 so you make sure that you're having those different metrics tracked as well.
Awesome. So, I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but ultimately, just the whole game has changed in terms of the way that our customers, interact with us. So Meg, can you talk a little bit more about the buzzword that I was just saying of customer journey and how GA4 lends itself to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I was saying earlier, like people are now purchasing on desktop, mobile apps, tablet. There's all kinds of different ways that people interact with your brand. And so, what enables you to look at that is now you're going to have, that data from not only your website, but then also those different data sources. So, I also think one thing that's important for everybody in teams is like making sure that when you guys move over to GA4, you have a discussion around like what metrics you are going to use, because one of the new changes in GA4 is that there's like 3 different source types. So I think that's a big thing that you're going to want to have, maybe like a quick sit down and make sure everybody's aligned on like, okay, we're going to be looking at this for source. We're going to, so that everybody is looking at the same information. But I think, like I said earlier, it really gives you the ability then to have that data combined so you can really lean into, where are your conversions happening? Like Jen said, is, video or content, downloading, what videos are they downloading, or is content, what people want to see? It's going to give you all of that visibility.
Okay, so here's the freak out moment. I feel like for all of us. So we know that our historical data is going away. So Meg, what should we be doing about that? How can we get ahead of this very scary idea that all this data we've been collecting for years and years is no longer going to be tracked?
Yes. So, one thing, like I said, is, moving over and now having the ability to look at your universal and then GA4, that's going to give you to make sure that you're going to have the reporting that you need moving forward. In terms of the historical data, so one of the great things for our current clients and then any prospects, so anybody that isn't a current client yet, one great thing with Glew is that we're going to actually be housing your historical data. So if you were, let's just say you don't use Glew currently, you came today to the website and signed up for a new trial, we're going to actually import 2 years of your historical Google Analytics data. So that's one thing that I think one of our clients has found is really valuable, because they're going to have that data historically. And then the great thing too is with Glew, once you connect your GA4, our team, Nick and his team, have mapped it so that all of the reports that you currently get out of the box are going to be, they're going to kind of like full steam ahead. You're not going to see any changes in your reporting. It's just business as usual. But then for our custom reporting that we offer at Glew, you'll have more data from that API. So yeah, so that's, there's obviously other ways, but I think Glew is a great way for our current customers and then any other prospects to really house that historical data.
Awesome. So to that end, one of the things we were talking about earlier, and Meg hit on some of this, but I will say as a marketer, again, like near and dear to my heart, but some of the reports that I've used throughout my career are not going to be there anymore because we're no longer looking at sessions. So some of the things though that are still going to be out of the box, and I really encourage you, Meg and I are going to share, because we did a ton of research in preparation for this webinar, but we're going to share with you all the articles that we found. But essentially, you're going to get a homepage report, which we're all really used to. It's going to give you that high-level view and health of your website. But something that's kind of new is the real-time report. So you're going to see within the last 30 minutes what a user has been up to. And you can also get this, it's really a user snapshot so that you can see all the different interaction that they're taking. So again, kind of going back to that, really the whole customer journey and understanding all those different interactions, it's going to be so helpful to have all of this. And then having lifecycle reporting. So essentially you'll be able to see, and again, these are some of the things that are already out of box within GA4. But again, going back to our original topic of understanding like the whole life cycle of the customer, you're going to be able to have and understand on a more granular level how you're acquiring customers, how you're engaging with them, how you're monetizing them, and then ultimately how you're retaining them. And so I think all of these things will ultimately be really helpful to us, moving forward and making more educated decisions on all of our different channels. And as Meg was talking about earlier today, I think this is a great opportunity to just have honest conversations with your team about, hey, what reports are we using today? What's really important to me that is not going to be available to me in GA4? And let's go ahead and prioritize those reports and get those built out.
Yeah.
And so the last thing, that we wanted to talk about is just really making sure that you have a solid migration plan. So it's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to actually do it. So I'm going to be providing to all of you, you'll receive the recording of our webinar today, also the slides. We're going to send you all those helpful links that we looked at in preparing this content, but then also a project plan. And it's just a basic Google sheet, but I do think it's helpful to have just a general centralized project plan so that you can look at all the different steps that you need to take and you can really evaluate it with your team. So the first thing would be just to go ahead and decide who your primary owner of the migration is going to be, and then who your different team members are that need to be involved. And in just a second, I'll show you all the different steps. But essentially, in talking with your team, you can understand the level of effort for each one of the steps in the migration process. As Meg was mentioning earlier, if you're already a Glew customer, you don't need to worry about the historical data. But if you're not, then definitely making sure that you have a plan for what you're going to do with all that UA data that you have. And then making sure that you're creating your internal deadline. So we talked about, February 1st, but just making sure that, you're really looking at that as, okay, like we have a solid 6 months to make sure that we can get everything lined up the way that we need to. And then having a checklist, which I'm gonna share with you all. So these are all the migration steps. This is directly off of Google's website, nothing that, the team here at Glew created. This is all readily available, and I will also share the link to that as well. But this is kind of a more bite-sized view of all those different steps. But here's kind of your getting started, and then everything that you need to do to finish the migration. So as you can see, quite a good bit of work. Again, it really goes back to that sort of fundamental thing of realizing we're transitioning from sessions to events, to making sure you get that set up properly from the very beginning. And so lastly, and we can really open this up to Nick, if you'd like to chime in on this as well, but just talking about how Glew can really help, with the overall migration.
Yeah, like Meg and Jen have been mentioning, the first step is making sure that we've got all your universal analytics data, all of that old Google Analytics. Our goal here at Glew is to ensure that we're retaining that historical, and we're doing it in a way that we can continue that reporting within Glew and within your custom reporting as you move forward with GA4. So you'll be able to continue to get the same, attribution that you have in the past, continue to see those visits, the visits data blended, over time, year over year. Whereas, within, once you make that switch over to GA4, GA4 and Universal Analytics within the Google Analytics platform are going to be separated, split out. You'll still have access to that UA data for some time. There's not currently a sunset date for when they're going to officially cut that off, but you will still have it. It'll just be completely separated within your platform. So first step is definitely getting that data connected within Glew. We're actually wrapping up our complete integration with GA4 right now as we speak, and when we get that released, you're going to be able to go into your Glew account, select the new GA4 profile, and actually select when you made that switch over to GA4. When you do that, we're actually going to go back and fetch that historical data for GA4 starting at that date moving forward. And like I said, while preserving all of that historical UA data. So all of that data, through the mapping we've created, we'll be able to maintain that history, within your existing tables.
That's great.
Awesome. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. I've been trying to keep a look and see if we got anything in particular. It doesn't look like we've had anything to roll in just yet. Maybe want to talk about just really quickly, or Nick too, but just the fact that there is more data that's going to be available within GA4. So from a custom reporting perspective, how that could be an advantage.
Yeah, Nick, do you want to maybe tackle that one? I feel like you are hands-on with the data.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're finalizing a few pieces right now, but as we mentioned earlier in the call, one of the things we're looking at are the different attribution models that are available within GA4. As we talked about earlier, within the UA data, they've always leaned on a last click attribution model showing where that last click occurred within a customer's journey. Whereas now, there's actually going to be, multiple different, sources for that data. They're going to have, what they call their first user source. So that's going to be the first source ever associated with the user. So to give you a good example, if you're looking, if you have a customer in your store and they first came to your store from a Facebook ad, then, their first user source, as Google's calling it, will always be Facebook moving forward. So that first user is the default traffic dimension type underneath the user acquisition report within GA. They also have a session source. So the session source is going to be the source that initiated the session. So an example there would be if the customer started their journey, or I'm sorry. Good example there would be, the user journey with, your customer, their session source would be Google because the click that initiated the session was a Google search ad. And actually, I messed up probably the original kind of originating, journey before. And then the last one is the source, and the source that received at least partial credit for the conversion based on your default attribution model. So this is leaning more towards a data-driven, attribution. So like I said, there's going to be multiple, sources, within Google Analytics and available through their API. We're looking right now to, lean towards, what's your default attribution. That's going to flow all the way into Google, but then at the same time, looking at ways in which we can provide those other attribution models as well. So within your custom reporting, you'll have access to all three.
That's awesome.
Okay, perfect. Well, it doesn't look like we've had any other questions that have come in, but our virtual door is always open here at Glew. So if you think of some questions, after attending the session, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. As a reminder, we will be sending after this the slides, a copy of the recording, and then also all of the content that we found that was helpful to us in preparing this. And then also the project plan. So a lot of helpful tools to hopefully make sure that this is a really smooth transition for you. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Thanks all.